For nearly 30 years, the world believed that O.J. Simpson was the man behind one of the most explosive and talked about crimes in American history, the brutal deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. But what if he wasn't? What if the real killer wasn't the celebrity in the courtroom, but someone else entirely, a man lurking in the shadows, someone who claimed he had done this before? Not once, not twice, but 70 times. His name is Glen Rogers, a charming drifter, a self-proclaimed serial predator, a man who now says he was the one who ended Nicole's life. And now, with his execution date officially set, his final moments may hold the answer to a decades-old question. Was O.J. Simpson innocent all along? Glen Rogers wasn't your average criminal. He was smooth-talking, charismatic, the kind of man who could win your trust with a smile and then disappear before you realized what was missing. He loved fast cars, fast women, and telling dangerous lies. They called him the Casanova Killer, not just because of his charm, but because of what followed wherever he went: blood trails, broken lives, and cold motel rooms. At one point, Rogers claimed he had murdered over 70 women. 70. No official proof, no complete list. But one name he mentioned sent a shockwave through history: Nicole Brown Simpson. The same woman whose death gripped the nation and led to one of the most controversial trials of all time. Was it a fantasy, a twisted attempt at fame? Or was Glen Rogers the killer no one saw coming? Glen Rogers is now 62 years old, and after nearly 3 decades on death row, the countdown has officially begun. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed his death warrant on April 15th. The execution is scheduled for May 15th, just weeks away. The method? Lethal injection. It's a date that marks the end of a long, violent chapter and possibly the last chance to uncover the full truth about what Glen Rogers really did and what he might still be hiding. Because time is running out. And with every tick of the clock, the mystery only grows louder. Let's rewind the clock to 1995. Tina Marie Cribbs was 34 years old, a devoted mother of 2, just trying to enjoy a quiet night out in Tampa, Florida. That evening, she walked into a local bar, nothing unusual. There, she met a man. He was charming, clean cut, the kind of guy you wouldn't look twice at in a bad way. He said he needed a ride home. Tina, being kind-hearted, agreed. She told her friends she'd be gone for just 15 minutes, enough time to drop him off and come right back. But she never did. That was the last time anyone ever saw her alive. That same night, Tina's mother, Mary Dick, was waiting to meet her daughter. She sat at the bar, watching the clock, minutes turning into an hour, then 2. No sign of Tina. Worried, Mary began paging her over and over. 30 messages, no reply. Something felt off. The next morning, Tina didn't show up for work. She didn't call, didn't check in. No trace, no excuse. And that's when the sinking feeling turned into a mother's worst nightmare. Her daughter was gone. A few days later, investigators traced a motel room that had been rented under Glen Rogers' name. It was a small, nondescript place, the kind of place you'd forget 5 minutes after walking out. But what they found inside would haunt them. In the bathroom, Tina Marie Cribbs was discovered lying on her back in the tub. She was clothed, wearing a damp t-shirt, underwear, and socks. The water had been drained. On the floor nearby, detectives noted a pile of wet clothes and blood-stained towels. There were signs of struggle, defensive wounds, and evidence suggesting that Tina fought for her life. Missing from the scene were 2 things: Tina was rarely seen without a ring: and her watch, and her car nowhere in sight. But it wouldn't stay missing for long, because Glen Rogers was already on the run. 1 week after Tina's body was found, Glen Rogers was spotted not in Florida, but over 700 miles away in Kentucky. And he wasn't hiding. He was driving Tina's car. When police attempted to stop him, Rogers took off, leading them on a high-speed chase through the backroads of Madison County. Sirens wailed, tires screeched. At times, it felt less like an arrest and more like a final act of desperation. Eventually, authorities forced him off the road and into custody. But here's where things got strange, because instead of staying silent, Glen Rogers started talking. And what came out of his mouth would crack open something far darker than anyone imagined. Once in custody, Glen Rogers didn't ask for a lawyer. He didn't deny anything. Instead, he started boasting. He told investigators that Tina wasn't his first victim, not even close. In fact, he claimed there had been dozens before her. Not 3, not 10, over 70. He said it so casually, as if it were a twisted badge of honor. Investigators were stunned. They'd brought in a murder suspect, but now they were sitting across from a self-proclaimed serial predator. And just when it couldn't get more surreal, Glen dropped a name that made jaws hit the floor. Nicole Brown Simpson. Yes, that Nicole. Nicole Brown Simpson. The name that dominated headlines. The name forever linked to O.J. Simpson. And now, uttered by a man sitting in a Kentucky jail cell. According to Rogers' brother, Glen confessed that he had been hired to steal from Nicole's home. But things got out of control. He claimed that during the robbery, Nicole and Ron Goldman interrupted him, and that's when everything went wrong. It was the kind of confession that sounded too outrageous to be true, too coincidental, too perfectly timed. But Rogers knew details. He claimed he had worked on a painting crew near Nicole's house, that he'd met her, that he'd been inside, and then she was gone. The Los Angeles Police Department dismissed the confession. They said there was no hard evidence. They didn't buy it. But still, that name, Nicole. It echoed through the air like a warning no one wanted to hear. Was Glen Rogers telling the truth? Or was it all just a sick fantasy from a man who craved attention? The Los Angeles Police Department didn't hesitate. They called his confession unreliable. No forensic evidence, no witnesses, no direct connection to Nicole or Ron. Case closed, at least officially. But not everyone was convinced, because Rogers had a history of traveling across states, of using aliases, of leaving bodies in his wake. He moved like a ghost in and out of cities, relationships, and crime scenes. And while law enforcement dismissed the claim, Hollywood didn't. Rogers' confession would go on to inspire documentaries, online theories, even a made-for-TV movie. Because whether it was fact or fiction, one question still lingered. Why would a man on death row lie if he had nothing left to gain? If Glen Rogers didn't kill Nicole Brown Simpson, then why say he did? Why confess to a crime that was already closed, a crime the world had pinned on someone else? There are a few theories. Some believe it was a power move away to reclaim control, even from behind bars. A final middle finger to the justice system. Others think he was chasing attention. A dying man with nothing to lose and everything to gain by inserting himself into a case that made headlines around the globe. And then there's the chilling possibility that he wasn't lying at all. That maybe, for once, the most outrageous story was the real one. That the man we dismissed as a fame-hungry lunatic was actually telling us the truth and no one wanted to hear it. Because believing Rogers means reopening a wound America tried desperately to close. And not everyone's ready for that. The confession might have been ignored by police. But Hollywood ran with it. In 2012, a made-for-TV movie titled My Brother the Serial Killer aired to millions of viewers. It followed Glen Rogers' story and his shocking claim that he was responsible for the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Actress Mina Suvari played Nicole. The film pulled no punches. It presented Rogers not just as a drifter, but as a shadow figure lurking in the background of one of the most sensational trials in modern history. It was dramatized, of course, but for many viewers it planted doubt. Could the justice system really have gotten it that wrong? Was O.J. Simpson truly innocent? Or were they both guilty in their own ways? The movie didn't give answers, but it reignited a fire. And suddenly, Glen Rogers, long forgotten on death row, was back in the spotlight. While Glen Rogers claimed dozens of victims, only 2 were ever confirmed in court. In Florida, there was Tina Marie Cribbs, the mother of 2, lured from a bar and found lifeless in a motel bathtub. And in California, there was Sandra Gallagher, a 33-year-old woman whose body was found inside her burning car just hours after meeting Rogers at a bar. Both cases bore the hallmarks of someone cold, calculating, and completely detached from human empathy. Rogers was convicted in both murders, 2 separate trials, 2 death sentences. But law enforcement in multiple states believe his real body count is far higher. There were too many coincidences, too many missing women who had crossed paths with him, too many motel rooms, back roads, and blurred timelines. He left a trail of violence that stretched across the country. And for every name we know, there may be 5 we don't. So why does this case still matter? Because we're not just talking about a man sitting on death row. We're talking about a man who may have manipulated the system or exposed its deepest flaw. Glen Rogers is scheduled to be executed in a matter of weeks. And yet, there are still unanswered questions, still loose threads, still families who never got closure. If even one part of his confession is true, then one of the most infamous criminal trials in American history may have been built on a lie. This isn't just about justice for 2 confirmed victims. It's about the victims we never found, the stories we never heard, and the possibility that the real truth, the whole truth, is about to die with him. Because once Glen Rogers is gone, there's no rewinding the tape. Time is running out. Florida has set the execution date May 15th, and with just days left, both prosecutors and defense attorneys are scrambling to close any unfinished business. Court records show Rogers was given until April 19th to file any last-minute motions. No appeals after that, no delays, no more chances. Which means if Glen Rogers has anything else to say, any confessions, any secrets, any names, this is it. His final window. The last breath before silence. Will he go out still clinging to his twisted stories? Or will he finally tell the truth, the real truth, before the drugs flow and the curtain falls? Whatever happens. Once that clock hits 0, the answers die with him. Before the headlines, before the arrests, before the confessions. Glen Rogers was just a kid from Ohio. Born in 1962, he grew up in a large, troubled family, one of 7 siblings. By the time he was 15, he was already out of control, drinking, stealing, getting kicked out of schools. He had charm, sure, that smile, that swagger. But behind it was something darker. By his early 20s, he was bouncing between states, picking up jobs as a day laborer, a painter, anything that kept him moving and under the radar. He married young, had 2 kids with his high school sweetheart, Deborah Nix. But even that life didn't ground him. He was always drifting, always searching, and always leaving wreckage behind. People who knew him described him as magnetic and terrifying. He could charm you in one breath, then snap in the next. And maybe that's the scariest part. He didn't look like a monster until it was too late. Here's the part that keeps people up at night. How many victims never got justice? How many families never knew what happened to their daughters, sisters, wives? And if Glen Rogers really was involved in the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman, what does that say about our justice system? Did the country put the wrong man on trial? Did we all get so caught up in celebrity, in courtroom drama, in cable news headlines that we missed the quiet predator moving in the background? Or is Rogers just another manipulator? Someone who saw an open wound and twisted the knife? The question isn't just, did he do it? It's, why didn't we look closer? And now, we may never get the chance to know. No matter what happens on May 15th, Glen Rogers will leave behind a legacy, but not the kind anyone would want. Notorious, chilling, unfinished, 2 confirmed victims, dozens of suspected ones, and one high-profile confession that still casts a shadow over one of America's most infamous trials. Was he a master manipulator, or a truth teller dismissed because his story came too late? To this day, Glen Rogers remains a mystery wrapped in violence, a drifter who used charm like a weapon, a man who thrived in the cracks between truth and lies. And when his final hour comes, we'll still be asking the same question we were asking 30 years ago. Did justice ever really happen? Or did it slip through our fingers while we were all watching the wrong man? So, what do you believe? Was Glen Rogers just another liar spinning tales from death row? Or was he the hidden hand behind one of the most shocking crimes in modern history? Is O.J. Simpson's trial still the biggest legal illusion of our time? Or did we miss something even darker, a truth hiding in plain sight? Let us know what you think in the comments. We read every theory, every detail. Because the truth, it's never simple. And if you want more stories like this, more cases that twist reality and challenge what we think we know, make sure to subscribe to Crime Pulse Stories. Hit that bell because the next story might be even stranger than this one.